Hi, good evening. My name is Alicia James, and I am the visionary and the president of the PAM Project. PAM stands for Preserve a Mom. It is a social enterprise that advocates for Black mothers and their mental health and wellness. Tonight is my last night of doing interviews with five Black mom entrepreneurs who are change agents. They are visionaries in their communities. They are leaders who have taken the charge with addressing issues in the community, and they are creating impact. Before I tell you more about my guest tonight, I want to just focus on the importance and the heaviness of today. Today makes the 45th anniversary of the death of Emmett Till. I actually have found a quote written by his mother where she mentioned how at one point before her son's death that the problems and racism and deaths in the South, she never felt that that was a concern of hers until it happened to her, and how she began to show up. And that's not just advocating for her son, but the importance of all of us advocating for each other. I know that there are many people now traveling home back from the March on Washington. And this day is a very historic day for the Black community, as many leaders traveled together on buses and cars to make sure that our voices were heard. If they weren't heard from as far back as the first death, that murder that happened this year. Um, but as a community, as a country, we are tired of the injustices, the lack of accountability, and we want change. And so it's very important that I'm using this week to interview Black mothers who are about creating change, making sure the voices of the voiceless are heard, and making sure that our communities and the issues that matter to them are taken seriously. And this month is Black Philanthropy Month. It's also Black Business Month. And today also is Black Give Back Day. So if you are connected or aware of any Black led organizations, I encourage you to support them. It's so important that our Black led organizations receive support in terms of donations, in terms of sponsorships, grants, and most importantly, donations. And if you're not able to do any of those things, you can share their information on their platforms, social media, on their website, and learn more about the work that they're doing and spread the word. So, as I said earlier, tonight is my last night of interviewing amazing Black women who are making an impact in our community. And so I have the pleasure of introducing to you and sharing with you Jackie Rutledge and talking about what she's doing on Long Island. She has been working in the nonprofit sector for more than 15 years. She's a co-founder of the Long Island Business Alliance, which started out as a group after the Charlottesville um, violence that occurred. She and her co-founder decided that they wanted the Long Island Black community's voices to be heard, and they wanted to implement change. And so I'm going to invite her in to join me in the studio so she can tell you more about herself, and more about their vision for the future and making change on Long Island. Hi, Jackie. How are you?
I'm good, Alicia. How are you?
Okay, you can hear me well?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, good.
So I don't know if you heard me, and I was talking about the heaviness and the history of August 28th.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even mention that Barack Obama, he accepted a nomination on this day. This day is also the day that MLK gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. at the Lincoln. And so this day is very heavy. And but I focus on Emmett Till's mom because as a Black mother, a lot of times we don't have a choice in how we show up. We're constantly on the front lines and advocating for ourselves, for our families. And a lot of times we take on the charge of advocating for our communities. And so I think it's perfect that I'm interviewing you last because the work that you and your co-founder are doing with the Long Island Business Alliance speaks to, how we as Black women, we rally people together to get the work done because it requires the vision of maybe one person and leadership, but it also requires that we know how to be resourceful and rally people together to make
Mm-hmm.
things happen. So tell me before we even get into that, how are things been for you since this pandemic started?
Well, so that's a lot to to delve into. But before I do, I just want to make one quick correction. It's the Long Island Black Alliance, not Business Alliance. So
Sorry.
that's okay. Just the Black Alliance. But so things for me, um, since the pandemic, and as a mom, things for me are very much tied to how things have been for my family in general. And so I am the mother of an only child. She's 4 years old. So going into isolation, she was in pre-K, going 5 days a week and loving it and having all of her little buddies and so forth. And then she was not feeling well on Friday. Back in March, one Friday, we kept her home, and that was it. That weekend, everything shut down. She hasn't been back since. So the isolation was difficult for her, which in turn means it was difficult for me. I'm trying to work essentially full time, and now I have a young child that needs to be schooled, entertained, supported emotionally, and doesn't seem to understand or care about mommy's work or what mommy's doing. So it was difficult. My husband hasn't stopped working outside of the home since. So it was it's been she and I for the main part for almost 6 months now. And we I should I say all that I should preface it by saying that we have been, thank God, healthy and stable in our home. So it could be a lot worse. So that I think needs to be acknowledged. It could be a lot worse. So in that regard, we've been doing well. But the emotional load of kind of just making sure my daughter was okay was a lot because she wasn't okay, to be completely
Yeah,
frank.
yeah,
And you and I talked a little bit earlier, and I remember saying that it's not just that there was a pandemic and then there was racial unrest. It's life continues to happen while all of
yeah,
those things are happening. So in the midst
yeah,
of that, we had some family changes outside of my immediate family, but some family changes that were difficult for her to adjust to as well. So she had all that going on, and I was trying to make it happen for her, trying to hold down work, trying to hold down her emotionally, not really putting in the time or the effort into taking care of myself because I really just I put in the time. I didn't have the time to do it,
yeah.
so that was a stretch. But I will say right now, thankfully, things as things begin to open up outside, I can take her more places. We can get out of the house more. We have some friends that we've kind of invited into our little isolation bubble because things are getting a little safer to do that with transmission rates being as low as they are right now in the state. So it's getting a little better. It's getting better.
How was it? Well, she's 4,
She's
so it
4.
wasn't. Did the school? What did the school do? Did they set up anything for like Zoom remote learning? Like how was that?
It was a challenge. They did not do any of that for the preschoolers. I don't know for the pre-K grade. I don't know what my school district is going to do going into fall now that they know, now that they know in advance that this is a situation they need to tend to for the pre-K. I don't know. I know that when school ended for her, it was abrupt, obviously, as it was for everyone. And in the immediate weeks that followed, there was no real plan. I live in a district where it's one of a few districts on Long Island that has universal pre-K provided by the state, and so the school has a grant that they administer to separate daycare centers. So I think that third person, that break in the system was part of what made it kind of difficult for there to be like a real cohesive plan for the pre-K, because you have a bunch of pre-K kids in different daycare centers. They're not all under one roof. They don't have the same building administrators. They don't have any of that. And so in the beginning, we really didn't get much of anything. And
Oh,
that was interesting for me, because at that time, and I am also now still a fellow with the New York Education Trust. And so in that role, I was doing the work of advocating on behalf of children, just in general. This is, precedes the pandemic and precedes schools closing down, but doing the work of trying to make sure that all of our children have access to equitable public school and equitable educational opportunities, no matter where they live, no matter what their financial, social, economic status is, no matter what their skin color is. And then to find
thank you
myself,
for that.
well, thank you. Um, and so I found myself now kind of like being thrust into the story, and it's interesting because prior to the pandemic, I was fortunate. I was kind of positioning myself in the category of being fortunate, because, like I said, it's not like universal pre-K is universal across the island. It's not. So,
Right.
there are very few school districts that offer that for children who are 4, or, before they enter kindergarten. And so we were lucky that we had that. But then it kind of went away, and the way it's set up, I think, allowed for some things to kind of slip through the crack. Eventually, though, they adopted the use of an app. They adopted some regular communication, and it got a little better. I think by that time she was kind of over it.
Mm.
But it did get better in that regard. So that was I think they did the best they could. It was unprecedented for everybody, but I think they did the best they could. And in that time also, I became a parent voice on Governor Cuomo's Reimagine Education Advisory Council. And so I was also able to bring that insight and that experience to those conversations as well.
That's good that you
Mhm.
had that experience to make sure that point was noted.
Yeah.
Um, because and I'm happy that those who maybe watch us on the live or the replay, we need to keep having those conversations and speak to different parents to get their views on how things were for them in the spring,
Hmm.
and then moving forward, because I don't think we're still ready. Um,
I don't
no.
think I don't think everybody is ready. I don't. My school district now, for the kindergartners, is they have a hybrid option for every grade 1 through 12, where the kids can come in 2 or 3 days a week. I think it's 2 days a week, and then they get 3 days of live instruction or remote learning. That's everybody except for the kindergartners. They wanted grade K to come into the building 5 days a week in regular size classrooms, which is about 30 kids. I live in a district where class sizes are, overcrowded. And I just wasn't comfortable with that at all. And I'm fortunate to be in a position where I could say, I'm going to keep her home. A lot
Yeah.
of families don't have the opportunity to make that decision. The decision isn't, is it going to be too much for me to keep her home? The decision is, do I send them to school, or do I keep them home and quit my job? And, quitting your job means there's no food on the table, or the rent, is a struggle to get paid this month. So it was, I was fortunate enough for it to be a relatively easy decision for me to say, I'm going to keep her home with me, at least in
Yeah.
January, and see what happens. Like I said, the transmission rates in New York, as we know, are low. I hope they stay low. I hope we can manage to hold the line during the regular flu season as it comes up in a couple of months. And because I'd love to see her back in school. I'd love to see her with
Yeah.
her classmates, playing and socializing and learning and growing. And the earliest opportunity I'll have to do that, because of the way the district set up their plan, is to opt back in at the end of January. And by the time I do that, if it looks good enough to do that at the end of January, it's almost a full calendar year now that she's been in the house, not going to school. And it's not like this is her first school experience. Some kindergartners, this will be their first school experience.
Yeah.
And I had to take it away from her. So
I'm
yeah.
just, yeah, I'm thinking about that. My son is now 23, just remembering kindergarten. It's like, I used to live in Rockville Center,
Hmm.
and they had full school day. When my son was in kindergarten, that year is when they gave full day kindergarten.
Hmm.
And the district also offered early morning childcare and evening.
Hmm.
So it was like I didn't need like any other. supports.
Yeah,
I
that's
brought him to
awesome.
school at 7, and he was there all day. And they did something amazing. They let him have like all the kindergartners they let them do like a pre-test. So they
Mhm.
came to school like when all the big kids weren't there. So he
Mhm.
got to see what big school looked like, and each year, taking pictures in front of the building where he was going to be online and that whole experience. And so as I'm listening to him, like, yeah, you want all those first memories, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Me
Um,
too.
but thank
But
God,
safety first.
huh?
I said safety first. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, yeah, but it's unfortunate that they have to lose that, but it's fortunate that you don't have to make some choices that some other parents have to make, and
Yeah,
that's what's sad.
yeah,
That and yeah, you don't want to have to choose between having an income or your health,
yeah. How do
or
you
the
choose? You can't choose. You choose not to expose the child to potential illness, but then you keep them home, and you're exposing them to what almost certain hunger, or like it's not a choice. It's really unfortunate for a lot of community members, and even in just like my regular perusal of the newspaper, and I pay attention to the education stuff because of the fellowship that I'm in. And not that long ago, I remember reading in Newsday, they kind of did an assessment of the school districts across the island and what their response was. And it really just broke my heart to see they had the school districts listed alphabetically. So toward the end of the list, they talked about Syosset, which is a, relatively well-off, predominantly white neighborhood or school district. And it was like every kid had live instruction, every kid had access to a device, every kid had access to one-on-one tutoring or mentorship if they needed it. And then right after that, it was Wyandanch, where they had social workers delivering paper packets to children in homeless shelters. And and it's just kind of like, well, why does this stark disparity even need to exist? Like, what are we doing in our communities and in our local leadership to erase that type of drastic disparity?
right.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why the work of
This
the
is
fellowship is so important, and the work of all these other, like the organizations and the moms that you've been talking to work like what you're doing, just to kind of make sure that these issues are pushed to the forefront and that they're being discussed and talked about.
Can you? We're going to get into the work that you're doing with the group, but can you speak to the fellowship and what your role is and what you're learning?
So we're learning, like I said, it changed. I think the fellowship started back in February, and then a month into it, they had to completely redo everything because there were meant to be a number of travel opportunities and in-person trainings and workshops and collaborative projects and so forth. So we had to pivot, obviously, when everything with the pandemic happened. But what we are learning is again, the art of advocacy in the education space. What we're learning is how the kind of discrepancies that I just described on Long Island are really pervasive throughout the state. And then it's not just, what I was talking about was kind of really attached to wealth and economics and all the things that get associated with the racial disparities that we know so well. But then there are issues with people who live in rural communities. A lot of schools in some of these rural areas didn't have access to high-speed internet. I've heard stories of teachers having to drive several miles out to go to the nearest library or go back to the school building and sit in the parking lot and teach their classes virtually. So, there are a number of things that we really need to be paying attention to, and when we talk about achieving equitable education for our children. And so, the fellowship allows for a deep dive into that work. It allows for parents like myself to be able to speak to what our different experiences are based on where we live, based on what our districts are doing, based on what our child's needs are, and to make sure that when, like right now, we're kind of working in collaboration with the rest of the trust to develop legislation and recommendations for lawmakers on how they
Mhm.
can help to achieve parity and equity for children in the age of COVID and then beyond. Because when I first started this fellowship, there was no COVID. It
Right.
was just the regular disparities that already existed. And how do we address them? How do we work to overcome them? How do we, advocate on behalf of our children? And now it has a whole new meaning in
Yeah.
this pandemic age. So it's been interesting. I mean, like everything else in life, back in March, everything pivoted and just really became completely different. So, but I'm happy for this fellowship experience. I've learned a lot. I'm working with some great parents. who are also in the fellowship program, working with some really great leaders from the trust. So it's been, it's been insightful, and it's been nice that it's not just them teaching or like talking at us. They're uplifting our voices as well and making sure that we are being heard and that we're bringing our experiences to the table.
That's good to know, and
Mhm.
I'm glad that there's is there diversity in the fellows?
Well, the fellowship is mainly, I think pretty much all of us are black, so it's mainly,
Okay,
yeah, it's mainly mainly geared toward our community and our children and so forth. But
okay, okay,
we
good.
do look at all the issues.
Yeah, yeah. I think unfortunately this pandemic, coronavirus, has highlighted more so what we knew already
That's right.
in terms of disparities.
Hmm.
And it's unfortunate that people, decision makers didn't reel in families and teachers and saying, what issues and concerns or problems did you find during the spring so that they can be dealt with immediately, as they prepared for the fall. So
Hmm.
that probably would have helped more with the planning. Um,
For sure.
I think they focus more on opening of businesses and figuring like, oh, school's over, we'll just move on to the next thing and looking at the economics
Hmm.
of and so I think that's playing into what's happening now with the lack of planning and preparation for schools opening. So, but
Hmm.
there was something else that I just want to focus back on you
Hmm.
and talk about. You said your self care and in the beginning how things were. How are things for you now? What are you doing to take care of you during all this?
Uh, you know, I think for me, it's the getting out more now that things have opened up. In the beginning, I was kind of, in the very, very beginning, I was good about getting outside and being in the yard and going for walks and doing all that stuff. Then I got a little overwhelmed and it just got a little heavy and I fell off. But now I think I'm back more in a headspace where being able to get outside is good. And I'm doing that. I've dedicated at least, and it's only just one day a week, but it probably should be more. I've dedicated at least one day a week to going out and doing something, taking in something new, having an experience. And really, I did that with my daughter in mind, but it's obviously benefiting me as well. And, getting back to being active, trying to do a little exercise, making sure I get my 8 hours of sleep a night. I'm a person who does not function properly if I don't have a full night's sleep. So that's key. Because in the beginning, I was wrestling with insomnia as well. So
Yeah,
yeah, up at 4 o'clock in the morning, staring at the walls, thinking this cannot be it. So I'm able to now get back into a more regular sleep routine, which is really good. So I think, and again, being able to see friends for me too, not just for my daughter, but being able to connect with my girlfriends and kind of pour into them and talk about what we're all doing and what we're working on and laugh has been really, really beneficial as we've had the opportunity to kind of, do some things safely, social distancing or outside, and just a couple of us around a table with a glass of coffee or a glass of wine or whatever the case may be. That's been really, really good. And I think that is, generally speaking, I think, friendships are good, human connection is good. But for some reason, I think just for Black women, it's like, that sisterhood, being able to lean
yeah,
into your friends, being able to talk about the experiences that are so unique to us in this country anyway.
yeah,
Um, it's healthy and it's necessary. And it's, like my husband's fantastic. He's a great partner, but there's not, I can't talk to him about being a wife and being a mom. Like I can talk to him about it, but he doesn't, empathize at the same level. Like there's some
yeah,
things that only another mom is gonna get, and in this day and age, only another Black mom is gonna really. Even when I talk to some of my girlfriends, I have a couple of group chats with a bunch of other Black moms, and it's like, we were talking, and then there were those of us who have only daughters, and then those who have sons and daughters, or just sons. And at one point they were like, it was like the moms of the girls saying to the moms of the boys, like, like, we're here for you guys. Not that Black women don't experience racism and brutality in this country, but when you talk about Black men and Black boys, I think there's a special anxiety and a special pain that Black moms feel. And so, you're
yeah,
not really, it was like that support, we were trying to be there for them. And so there was, like that kind of support that's kind of just innate and organic. Like you don't have to ask for it. People just know it's needed. I got you. What do you need? Let's talk about it. So that's been, I think, very, very good for me in these last few weeks.
You're talking about something that I promote heavily, and it's so good to hear that you have that, and it's called, your village. That we
Mm-hmm.
all need our village, right?
Yes.
And I did something early on when this pandemic started. I sent an email out to my database for the PAM project just to check in and see how everyone is doing, because you immediately feel isolated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, as I said earlier, this is when you really see what your support system looks like and what it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Because either you were maybe heavily relying on resources or the support of individuals in your family or close friends. And if you didn't really have that, it's when you really see the importance of it.
Yeah. I
Um,
agree.
I my anxiety was like really, really bad. And
Mm.
one point I wasn't going to the supermarket because the store near me wasn't doing social distancing. I couldn't order from Peapod. It
Mm-hmm.
was like a month in advance. I was like, this is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I needed my holistic, my ginger, my lemons. I couldn't. Luckily, my girlfriend, she lives in Harlem. She did a drive by. She bought me
Oh, that's nice.
bought me stuff. But
At least you
that
knew what you
sisterhood,
needed. You knew
yeah,
what
like
you
that
needed. Mm-hmm.
sisterhood, like Black women, we see each other.
That's right.
We see each
That's
other.
right. We
And
see each
it's
other
like,
for sure.
look out. And so I'm happy to hear that you have that. And whoever's watching this live on the replay, if you don't have a village, you can build up your village. And
Yes,
how
you
you build
can.
up your village is being transparent, letting people know what your needs are, and just saying, I need help. You
Mm-hmm.
know, no need to be silenced and suffer through, because at this point in time, we really need to know um, that you have people that will support you, because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these government agencies, and they're not on full capacity to get the support you need the way you could have before the pandemic. So you do need to rely on your village.
That's
So I'm
right.
happy that you have that. So before we talk about the alliance, what made you choose to get into the sector? I mean, I think you're like the only person that I've interviewed this week that um, you've been in the work, doing the work beforehand. What made you choose this work?
So I kind of fell into nonprofit work. I wanted to be an event planner. And so my very first job in this field was planning special fundraising events for a nonprofit. And then from there, it just kind of grew. I really, from very, very early on, I think I felt most at home knowing that I was earning a living, not just kind of, not like trying to climb the corporate ladder or, be in the rat race or make widgets or whatever, that I was doing work that was really impacting people. And I knew that from that very first job because you work directly with the people who you're impacting and they'll tell you, how their life has changed. And in my role as a fundraiser, I had to be able to communicate that to potential supporters and donors and funders and so forth. And so it really resonated with me that I had the privilege of being able to show up to work every day and do something that was helpful to people. So I just stayed in that career path for the entirety of my career. And it's been rewarding. It's been challenging. Fundraising is not easy,
No,
especially especially since I think 2008 is when it got really really hard. But it was never it was never necessarily easy. But 2008 is when it was like, oh, this is a challenge. So but it's been rewarding. It's been rewarding, and in the last year and a half, almost 2 years or so, I've been kind of doing it independent as a consultant, and that's also been rewarding. I had some really exciting projects that I've worked on um, that were, really aligned with my own interests. So that was fun. But that's how I got into it. I fell into it. I wanted to plan events, and I did. You spend a lot of time
yeah.
planning events as a fundraiser in the nonprofit world.
I think that myself, working in the nonprofit sector, I think this work, it chooses you. You don't choose it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something very addictive about seeing that your role, whether big or small, that it's playing a part in inspiring, empowering someone else's life.
Mm-hmm.
And that part, it just it's a reward in itself. You
Mhm.
talk about, purpose work, just find like where you get to hone in all of your skills and abilities to make a difference in someone else's life. And
Mhm.
it's very um,
It's fulfilling.
gratifying.
Yes,
Yeah,
very
it's
much
very
so.
gratifying to feel
Mhm.
that, whatever you went to college for, and even people, it's like, why did you choose my degree is in marketing and business management? It's like, but I get to use all those skills for good, right?
That's right. Mhm.
Um, so now let's talk about this alliance, how this came to be, and what has happened since you launched it.
So the alliance came to be back in 2017 through a group of Black women that I came to know through. I don't even really remember exactly how I even met this group of women, but my very dynamic co-founder, Shaniqua Levin, was and is someone who
That's
is.
your co-founder. I
You didn't, Shaniqua?
Who does not?
Yeah, I was just about to say somebody who was and is very, very much on the front lines always. And
Yes,
so, in 2017, she was like, "We got to do something. There's this violence happening in Charlottesville. We need a presence here on Long Island." And we didn't want it to just be Black people, and especially on Long Island. You'll get strength in numbers if you get your allies to come join you. So it was an opportunity
absolutely.
for people to come stand together. And we actually had a rally right around the corner from my house in Amityville. Called the Stand Together Rally. And at that time, it was created to be like a rapid response to instances like that, like what was happening in Charlottesville, and the way too many to name now instances of racial violence that have happened across this country. And then, so very, very recently, maybe 2 months or so ago now, after George Floyd passed away, or was murdered, I should say, in plain speak, and Governor Cuomo issued an executive order for all New York municipalities that oversee a police department to re-examine the way that they conduct policing. And in response to that executive order, there were a lot of grassroots organizations who were starting to work in response to that, and talking about ways to divert funding from policing and reinvest that money back into community organizations that actually do uplift and promote public safety in ways that policing just doesn't accomplish. And so, I said to Shanika, there has to be a way that we can like pool this energy. Everyone's doing all their like different things in different places, and we need a coalition. We need to band together. We need to harness strength in numbers. We need to harness intellectual capabilities, people's time, all of that, all of these resources. We really need to just kind of pull them together so that we can have some unified demands and some unified set of actions in order to make sure that those demands get met. Because it's an uphill battle. What the alliance created the coalition, which is called the Long Island United, to transform policing and community safety. It's a little long, but the point the point is to really have and like really do research based work, really thoughtful work that is meant to create a list of demands that's going to talk about ways that we should be pulling money from oversized policing budgets and really investing in a greater umbrella of community-based solutions that can achieve public safety in ways that are more inclusive than just dialing 911 for every problem and having someone show up to your doorstep with a gun and some handcuffs, and whether or not they actually have the skills or the ability to solve your problem is debatable, because there are a number of things that we call the police for that they're really just not equipped to handle: mental health crises, people dealing with homelessness, substance abuse issues. All of these things don't necessarily require a police presence. They're not criminal in nature all of the time. And so we need to be broader in our scope in ways in which we talk about achieving safety for our communities. And, I've said, and the AOC has said this also, when you think about public safety, when you think about safe neighborhoods, it's not the neighborhoods where there's a cop car on every corner and every driver is being pulled over and patted down on, at the every stoplight you come across. That's not, those aren't the safest neighborhoods. It's not the one with the heaviest police presence. It's the one with the excellent schools. It's the ones with, better access to healthcare. It's the ones with greater thriving economics, with development being, invested in resources being diverted to these communities for these reasons. That's how you achieve safety, is by giving people opportunity, giving people recreational opportunities for their young people, We have in our Black and Brown communities, in our Black communities, we have a high number of individuals who are criminally justice involved. How do we get those people back to work? How do we get them, to feel like they don't need to maybe engage in criminal activity
Right.
in order to make a living? These are the things that we should be investing in to meet crime before it starts, not just responding to it with force or with guns or with prison time or with disproportionate um, being involved in the justice system. Like there are other ways and more innovative ways that we should be considering how we achieve that. And so that's what the coalition is meant to do.
I'm as I'm listening to you, I'm remembering. Currently live in Manhattan, but I grew up in Long Island, and I remember a few years ago. I think Swazi was no longer in office, and there was this tug of war between Republicans and Democrats, and regarding I forgot what they were fighting about, but what happened was the youth lost, and the Nassau County used to have a youth board,
Mm-hmm.
and I used to run a mentoring program for girls. Seemed like another lifetime ago, but they took that away, and so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of youth services programming, it's all taken away. Nassau County no longer has a youth board. A lot of after school programming, which provides services in our communities, all gone.
Mm-hmm.
So when I listen to you talk about, solutions, right, where we have options for people and our youth, you know, it would start there. So if you're going to take away from the budgets from the police department, it would have to go right back into refunding those programs that used to
Mm-hmm.
exist,
Mm-hmm.
where our kids have mentoring programs and after school activities and all these things, and they're not hanging out and all those other, things. We're in a pandemic now, but all of that was taken away.
Mm-hmm.
And so
And some
I
communities never
hope
had it to begin with, to have had it taken away.
some did right.
So yeah, these are this is how we give youth. And you're talking about communities where people are working multiple jobs just to make ends meet. But then you have people saying, "Well, where are the parents? They're at work trying to make sure the lights stay on." Let's give
Right.
the youth something to do. Let's give them someplace safe to go. Let's provide them with opportunities, rec centers, whatever it is. Let's build that up. Let's build up the opportunities for people in these communities to be supported as they venture into entrepreneurship so that they can have more flexibility or more control over their own schedules.
Right.
It's not just penalizing people for being poor. That doesn't get it. That doesn't achieve safety at all.
Right. Right. Wow. So tell me, long term, what do you hope to accomplish with the coalition? Will the coalition take over for the alliance, or is it going to still be two separate visions?
There are two separate visions. The coalition has about 30 member organizations right now, and it is, we're operating from a place of ownership for all the member organizations. So the alliance convened the coalition, but we're not the ones who are like, running it, quote unquote. It is an equal opportunity, shared ownership coalition, and it's not just organizations. I should make note that if you're an individual in the community who's concerned and you're not part of any other organization, you're still welcome to come under our umbrella and help us do this work. But long term, the goal is to, like I said, see those changes be implemented. That's going to be an uphill battle, we know, but we are in it for the long haul. And we'd like to see really a plan come out of it that is something that can be replicated in other communities so that we can all, at a greater scale, achieve a greater sense of public safety and community safety that really reflects the values of the communities that we all live in and the communities that these budgets that tend to give outsized and disproportionate amount of funding to policing, that those budgets actually reflect the values of the people who are meant to not only be served by them, but for the taxpayers who are actually funding them.
Okay. Okay. Um, what would be, we talked about this before we came on. Tell me what the asks would be from the public. How can they help with the long term or short term goals of the alliance or the coalition?
The short-term goals, I would say, join us on Sunday, this coming Sunday, day after tomorrow, 1 p.m. Well, I don't know when someone might be watching this, but it's August 30th. 1 p.m. in Hop Hog in front of the Dennison building. We'll be having a rally and a speak out to just kind of talk about what the coalition is aiming for, what our goals are, what our work is about. A number of the member organizations will be present and speaking, and we'll be doing that in addition to demanding justice for all of the victims of racial violence and police brutality that we know and that we remember. And long term, I would say get involved with the coalition. You can find us on Instagram at li.united, on Facebook at li united. You can email us. We're at liutpcs at gmail. We want this to really be a community voice, right? So we recognize the strength in numbers. We are open arms, willing to work with all of our community members who are like-minded in their desire to see true safety achieved in their communities, to see real resources and funding being pushed back into communities that need it the most, that have been long-term traditionally neglected. And, and I'm talking about communities where we, I think, tend to get really comfortable with transactional help, right? It's like, you have a disproportionate number of people in your community who are food insecure, and so you pop up with the food pantry or, the food distribution. That's nice, but what we need is to be lifted up out of hunger. So let's get to work doing that in the long term.
Right.
So and these are the community members and those allies who we are talking to and who we want to come on board to help us achieve these long-term goals.
Yeah, I think that I was trying to, um, yeah, I was trying to type what I could so people can at least know where to find you. So I'm just going to leave that up there, the Long Island Business, Black Alliance, and see if they can just locate you there. But
yes, you can find us on Facebook there too, and you'll definitely see some stuff.
Yeah, because I think you have like a flyer or promotion for the rally this Sunday.
Yep.
Yeah. Something else you mentioned that I was trying to type and trying to help out with promoting the rally on Sunday. But I think that people need to get, not that people don't need donations of food now, because there are a lot of people that need that, but it always has to be like long term, like how can we help, because you don't want people like every week waiting for food and online, like how do we move forward from that, how do we help people long term, and it has to be. So this sounds really exciting. I wish I was on Long Island so I could just help. But I know you're
you don't have to be on Long Island. We would love to have you. And you're right. You talk about when I say having like a food pantry. That's that stuff is helpful. It helps.
Yes.
It does help. But we need to transform so that type of help, that type of transactional help, is no longer what we need on a regular basis. We need to lift people up out of poverty, provide resources so that they can lift themselves up out of that, provide the help to transform these communities so that we are looking at vibrant communities where food insecurity isn't the name of the game, or where environmental injustice isn't something that you just kind of take for granted. Those are the things we need, and those are the things that when I look at long-term plans, I look at it through the lens really of motherhood. And it's, I think about what kind of community do I want my daughter growing up in? What kind of life experiences do I want her to have? Where do I want her to live? All of these things. And it's for our children, for our next generations. It's important. And I've lived in this same community for a really long time. And I think about the things that I've seen that really haven't changed drastically. And as a young person, you kind of just think, well, it is what it is. And as an adult with a child to raise, where you are in charge of where that child comes up, you start to think about those things. Well, what can I do? Where can I take her? Where will the experience be different? Or do I stay here and I try to make this experience different for her, right here at home? What's acceptable? What's not acceptable? And a lot of the things that I experienced as a young person, my husband and I were having this conversation the other day. I reflect on it, and I'm like, some of this stuff just was not okay. The number of parties I went to as a young person that ended in gunshots. The number of people I know who have either died or been injured in gun violence. And
Yeah,
it's like, this is abnormal, and it's abnormal, but it's not. It's like abnormally normal. It shouldn't be such a omnipresent part of our existence when you live in certain communities. It's this stuff
right.
is not, it shouldn't be part of your regular. It's traumatizing. It's
Yeah,
traumatizing. And my husband, as a black man, talks about how conversations he has with his friends about how many of them have had guns pointed at them by the police, or been searched or pat that. He told me one of his friends when he mentioned my name, and I was like, "What is this biggest guy in the world? Why would anybody feel the need to pull a gun on him?" And it's just part of your experience being a black man or a black woman in this country, and it's just those things. It's just high time for those things to change. It's
yeah, yeah.
it's just not okay.
I think that, Jackie, you just, it's so heavy. And I think, we become so numb
Mhm.
to, you talk about mental, I advocate for Black mothers and mental health. And you talk about mental health, and it's just like, I don't want this to be acceptable. I don't want this to
Right.
be the new norm. I don't want to
Right.
be, when I hear about in New York City, the number of murders every week and the numbers continue to increase. It's like, one would be like enough news for like a month.
Mhm.
Now it's becoming like, and so I think about how are all these guns getting into our communities, and
Mhm.
like how is all of this is just, we're going backwards. And
Mhm.
so, I'm using this week to highlight moms like yourself, because it takes that level of fire and commitment to say this is not acceptable, and those that pick up the baton and say, no, this is not right, and I need to do
Right.
something about it. And that is a social entrepreneur. That is purpose work. And that
Mhm.
is the difference, because many people will sit comfortable at home and complain and wave their finger and say, this is not right. And this is as far as they'll go.
Right.
And then there's others that will say, this is unacceptable.
Mhm.
Like you and your co-founder, who have known for many years,
Mhm.
it doesn't require take much for her to be motivated.
Nope.
She's
She knows
she's
exactly what it is.
yeah, and so it's that seed planted in you to saying, not on my watch.
Yeah. And
This
I think you used the exact right word too. It's not acceptable. It's unacceptable. This is
yeah,
unacceptable. And I think I don't want to say it took becoming a parent for me to feel that way. I think it took me looking at the outside world around me as a space in which my child has to grow up for me to feel like, okay, wait a minute now. Some of these things that I've been seeing for a long time are just not really okay. It's because you become numb to it, you become accustomed to it, you become to, you start to think, well, maybe there's something else at play here that I'm not aware of, and it's like, no, these things can be changed. The
right,
work just needs to be done, but these things can be changed.
yeah, yeah. And so if you're watching this on the live or on the replay, um, Jackie, did you give me one ask or did you give me two? One
I gave
is
you
for,
one
oh,
for
you did.
Sunday. Two, yes. So I gave one for Sunday and one for long term, which is join us. Because we talk about people who think it's either unacceptable and they're not going to do anything, or those who are like, oh no, I'm going to do something about this. There are a lot of people who know it's unacceptable, feel uncomfortable, and don't know what to do, don't know where to start. So, if you
Right.
find yourself in that category, join us again on Facebook, LI United, or Instagram at li.united, or Long Island Black Alliance on Facebook, and you'll find your way back to the coalition or just to the alliance. But, there are a lot of organizations. Obviously, like I said, we have dozens in our coalition, but there are a number of organizations across Long Island and across the country who are full of just people who said enough is enough. This isn't right. I want to do something about it, and then they just get together and they work. Someone
Yeah.
has expertise in this area, and they'll guide you when it comes to this particular issue, or someone is well versed in this area, and they'll guide you when it comes to that. Even if it's like you want to do something in your skills, graphic design, get involved in an organization and help them with their logo, help them with their social media, help them with whatever, just to get the word out. Everybody has a perspective and a talent and a resource
Yeah.
and a skill that is valuable that can be added. So, don't feel like you don't have anything to add. If you're frustrated and you don't know what to do, get involved somewhere. Get involved somewhere, and it'll all be a value add in the end, because it's going to take us. It's going to take us.
Yeah.
We have people in positions of leadership who are comfortable, who don't want to be made to feel uncomfortable by being held accountable, and you have
That
people,
part.
and then you have people in position of leadership who are in the minority, and so they need the voice of the community to back them up in order to make the change happen from within. So it's gonna, it takes all of us. It takes us standing up, takes us using our voices, using whatever platform we have. Just get involved and shake things up, because if you live in a community where you feel like what's being offered to you and your family and your children is not acceptable, then you don't have to accept it. You really just don't. And it just there are strengths in numbers, and we all have something to contribute.
Right. And so I'm going to say for this day, August 28th, which is Give Back Black Day, I encourage you that, when people talk about philanthropy, most people think, oh, you have to be wealthy to, be a part of grant making. That has never been the case for the Black community. Philanthropy can be you giving of yourself. You, as Jackie just mentioned, whatever skills and talents you have, you can offer them, right? I know, like before this pandemic, a lot of people would always try to, join a board of directors to make their resume look better or whatever. But this is a time that you can still use that as a way to improve your skills in terms of marketing, but give back, support doesn't have to be a black led, but since it's Black Philanthropy Month, I'm gonna say a black led
Mm.
organization, and give your support and help them in some capacity. So if you don't have the financial means, you can help them with skills. And if you don't feel you have different skills, you can share the information and encourage people from the community to rally together to help support the Long Island Alliance, Black Alliance, and just be of support. Be about the change. You don't have to be the leader, but contribute in different ways to make a difference. Because when people don't hear our voice, they think it's acceptable to us. And we don't want them
Mhm.
to feel that what we're experiencing, what we're watching, um, is acceptable.
Mhm.
And so it's very important that our voices are being heard and that we support one another. So as I'm wrapping this up for Black Business Month and Black Philanthropy Month, we have to be our sisters, our brothers keepers. We have to show up and lift each other up and be our village that we need for not just for ourselves, for our next generation. And Jackie, you touched on something that's so important that we have to constantly remind ourselves, what do we want our kids to experience?
Mhm.
Even for me, it's like I remember, I think it was Bernard Getz. That was in the 1980s. Do you remember the white man? He shot
Mhm.
like 3 or 4 black kids in the back on the subway. And
Mm.
I was in high school. And I never forget, growing up in Rockville Center, some kids, they called themselves like the junior KKK. They wrote "Every nigger deserves what they get" on my school bus.
No.
I was in,
What?
um, yeah, I think I was in ninth or 10th grade. And so when I witness and see all these stories and experience of black men being shot in the back, I get those. I'm traumatized again. Those are
Mhm.
triggers for me. And so as an adult now, it's like we all have to do our part because we
Mhm.
can't accept, that we want that for our kids to go through this again. Like
Right. Right.
we're supposed to be moving forward. Like, are we feel like we're in the 60s and these things keep happening,
Right.
and they will keep happening if people sit home comfortable and complain and do nothing.
That's right.
And so again, if you're watching this live or on the replay, please reach out to Jackie and her co-founder of the coalition, and as well as the Long Island Black Alliance, and give of yourself and support them. It's so necessary. And if you're not able to support them because maybe you don't live in Long Island or what have you, connect yourself with any organizations that is about forward movement, right? We need to have as many people as possible rallying together to make a difference, right? And then on that, I'm going to say, because this is the last interview, do your census. It's so important
Mm,
that you do the census. We
yes,
need our numbers. Our communities need every count added because that is how we're going to be able to get the financial support that our communities desperately need. We need every number counted. And the other part that I need to just plug, vote and vote early.
yes, yes.
Put in that you need absent ballot and bring the ballots to the offices. You don't even have to wait until November 3rd. You can take your vote to them to make sure it's going to be counted. Those two things are so urgent, especially for the Black and Brown community. We need to be counted and we need to be heard. And being heard, you need to vote. Like your life depended on it because it does.
That's right.
And if that's not enough homework assignment for you, volunteer and donate to the organizations that are advocating for you. You got anything else for me, Jackie? You want to plug in?
I don't think so. I'm appreciative of you for providing this platform. I think it's so necessary. And just like I said earlier, just get involved. We are welcoming the entire communities, black, white, brown, whatever, come together in allyship. Um, we are, like I said, planning on doing this work. We're in it for the long haul. And so if you are looking for a way to get involved in making some transformative, sustainable change, then please join us.
Thank you for having that passion and that level of commitment and leadership on Long Island and just showing up every day for us. And as I said before, so many people sit comfortable and they point and complain, but to pick up the baton and do the work is so important. And so you are my last interview for the week. This has been a long week, but it's been amazing. And I hope that I was like, I gave myself this assignment,
Right.
but I hope that each interview has inspired people to start doing the work in their community and not just lean on others because it really requires multiple leaders in our community and the next generation of leaders. I'm in
Mm.
awe of the young people that are protesting and stirring up good trouble
Yes.
as our
Chuck Lewis.
John Lewis talked about.
Yes.
You got to get in the way. You can't accept, what has always been as what will always be.
That's right.
We have to create the change that we want to see.
Hmm.
So, Jackie, thank you so much for being my last interview for the week. And I will definitely do my part and share the rally that you guys are doing on Sunday. That's my part. At least I can do that part in making sure that as many people are aware of what's happening and will show up. And if they can't show up, that they will lend themselves to um, the vision that you guys have in making a difference on Long Island. So please take care and the best of luck to you and your little
Thank
one,
you. Thank you so much.
and whatever plan you're going to have for school. Um,
We're gonna get through. We'll get through some kind of some way. Thank you
thank
so
you.
much, Alicia.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
So, as I said before, this concludes my 5-day series of interviews of Black mothers who are social entrepreneurs, those who are making a change in our communities, those that are intentionally showing up to make an impact um, in our community. I encourage you, even though Black Philanthropy Month and Black Business Month is coming to an end, it doesn't mean that you have to stop looking for ways to support Black owned businesses and supporting Black led organizations that are making a difference in our community because it's so urgent that we support each other. I can't express that enough, that it's so important that we support and show up for each other. And that's the only way that our business will continue to thrive and be successful, is if we support one another. And again, since this is my last live for this week, please, please complete the census. If you have not already done that, I encourage you to do that. And if you have done that, encourage everyone you know to complete the census. Every voice needs to be heard, every home, and needs to have everyone counted, because our families, our communities need um, to get as many resources as possible. And that is how they will be able to get what they need. In addition to that, this election, if you haven't heard enough, is so urgent that you are ready to vote, that you request the ballot so you can vote early. Don't wait um, to request the ballot to vote, and do your part. Um, as I said earlier, famous words of Congressman John Lewis: get into good trouble, get in the way. Don't accept what has always been as what will always be. You can do your part to make a difference and stir up the change that we need to see in our communities. So, on that note, I'm saying to you, good night and God bless. Peace and blessings. Take care.